We're getting close. Utah Broadband Alliance. We need to drop council. We're getting darn close to where it needs to be. So welcome everyone. And Rebecca Dilch, I'm the director of the Utah Broadband Center. I would just like to take a minute right now and introduce you to two new staff members here with Utah Broadband Center. So in the back, I can't live without them anymore. I don't know how I ever got by without them.
We don't know how you did it.
We have Elizabeth Henriksen, and she's our project support specialist, and Claire Warnick, who is our program manager. So, and we feel free to reach out to any of them. I do not know everything anymore. I have help now to share all that knowledge. And I'd like to take a minute for those that are here in the room, just to give a quick introduction. And if you have any updates, I know we've got some that are presenters. And so if you don't want to say anything more other than your name and who you're with, and you're going to be presenting, because we'll get the full rundown. But if anybody has anything important or updates, or want to tell a little bit about yourself, now's the time to do it. And maybe we could start, I'm going to start over here because this conversation looks really intense. I'm not going to interrupt it.
Yeah, I'm Mary Ann. I'm presenting today, but I'm from ISOTRUST. I'll tell you a little bit more later today.
Tim Blackburn, Millennium, we're presenting too, so we'll get into a little bit more.
Gavin, Psyche, Millennium.
I'm Jeremy, that's Millennium as well. And you'll be presenting.
Way to go.
I'm Brandon from Midwest, I'm from Southern Utah, I run the fiber. That stuff.
Fabulous. Put that in.
Paul Burdock, High Country Nets, and I used to be in the southwest part of the valley here.
They got you out Sunway.
Dave,
Max Lopez, and Sunway.
Max with Sunaway.
David Perticchese with T-Mobile. I'll be presenting a little bit, so I'll tell you more.
I'm Alec Larson. I'm with Helios Drones. Phil and I are going to be presenting a little bit later, so we'll give you a more rundown version of that.
I'm Phil Larson, CEO of Helios. We're presenting a little later and give you a boring talk.
I'm Todd Jensen. I work with the Attorney General's office, and I'm assigned to work with the governor's office here and with Rebecca and the Broadband Center.
We appreciate it. Yep, very much.
Megan Mohar, I'm with Strata, with Dave Bryan in operations.
Sylvia Wilkins with Strata Networks.
Kara Tui with AT&T.
Brian Christensen with Borox.
Katie Williams with Horrocks. We're working with Rebecca on the feed program and digital equities. And Anne Williams with Horrocks as well.
Brock Johansson with Emory Telecom. Eddie Shelley with Comstar Supply.
Clint Jorgensen with Horrocks Engineers. I'm Vikram with MTIA.
Scott McCombs Canyon School District.
Charles Baldwin of Bitstream Smart City Solutions. Aaron Hildreth, operator Intelopop Internet.
Tyler Rasmussen with Strata Networks.
Bill Marchand, Always Communications. Cameron Francis with Beehive. Brad Welch with Centricom.
Lynn Yoakum with UDOT.
Recording in progress.
Oh, thank you. I thought it already said it was recording, so I'm glad it's just reminded us. Hey, we are being recorded, so silence your phones. Thanks, folks. How many do we have online with us today? Or approximately, do we have time to go through everyone? Yeah, we do. Let's see, I think the best way is to call them out one at a time. Let's see, let's start with Liz Gavidis.
Hi, Liz Gavidis. I'm with the State Library, and I am working with the Broadband Center on our digital equity plan for the state and on our digital equity capacity grant that'll come down the road.
Yay. Okay, I see a W right. You have 5 seconds to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Will Wright with the Uinta Basin Association of Governments.
Wonderful. Glad to have you. Sonia Ness.
Hi, yes, this is Sonia Naz with the Nomination Broadband Office, Department Manager, and Tico Charlie as well with the NNTRC.
Glad to have you both here. Thanks. Paul Davis.
Paul Davis with Bear River Association of Governments.
Great. Jerome Browning.
Webinar will begin shortly.
Jerome Browning, Jerome Browning, UET and State E-rate coordinator.
Great. Nice to have you. I know I always say this wrong. Kool-Aid.
Hi, Kalei Jacobzak with Verizon. Sorry I couldn't be there today. I'm traveling.
Okay, I'm glad you're here anyway. Brenda Salter.
Hi, this is Brenda Salter with the Division of Public Utilities.
Wonderful. Douglas Meredith.
Yes, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. Douglas Meredith with URTA.
Thank you. James Toledo.
Hello, it's James Toledo with the Division of Indian Affairs. I'm a little under the weather, otherwise I'd be there in person.
Hey, glad you could come anyway. Janelle Seeley.
I'm Janelle Seeley. I'm on the Providence City Council.
Great, glad to have you. Kristen.
Hi, I'm Kristen Schreiner with Salt Lake County.
Nice to have you. Christopher Sinclair.
Hello, Rebecca. It's Christopher Sinclair with Cable Runner.
Ah, nice to have you. It's been a while. Gail Long.
Gail Long with TDS Broadband Service. We're ISP.
Thank you. Bradley Clausen.
Good morning, Brad Clausen, Russ Telecom GFR. Just a couple of announcements. Our round 4 reconnect, the deadline is fast approaching. Those applications need to be in by 11:59 a.m. Eastern on November 2nd. And we do have a upcoming Community Connect and distance learning and telemedicine window that will be opening this fall. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I was gonna make sure we may have that announcement. So let me just make sure I heard that correctly, Brad. It's November 2nd, 11:59 a.m. So just before noon.
It is. So don't know why they picked that, but it is right before noon.
Yeah, that's weird. So that don't trip up on that. Those of us that like to.
58, not 12.
And Lynn will, and many of us will tell you, don't wait till the last minute. Don't even wait for the last hour. Because you never know what can happen, some technical glitches. So let's see, Jill Haslam.
Hello, Jill Haslam, Echo Hawk and Olson Law Firm, represents several different tribal clients in the state.
Thank you. Let's see. Nick, we heard from Gail. Gail Long, we heard from you already, right?
Yes.
Okay, your name came up twice. Nick Hathaway.
Hey, Nick Hathaway with Rise Broadband. We're an ISP.
Oh, nice to have you, Nick.
Thanks.
Jacob Barlow. Jacob Barlow.
Hi, Jacob Barlow. I'm with Lumen Technologies.
Great. Joe Kroll.
Yeah, my name is Joe with Rise Broadband. It's an honor to be here with you.
Thank you. Jim Sturzer.
Good morning, Rebecca. Jim Sturzer with Millennium.
Ah, you're well represented today. Let's see, Jacob Barlow.
Hi, Jacob Barlow. I'm with Lumen.
Kira Slauson.
Hi, Kira Slauson with the Utah Rural Telecom Association.
Nice to have you. Marianne Clayton. Oh, that's right. You're getting ready to present Jared Anderson.
Yeah, good morning, Jared Anderson with Emory Telecom.
Alan Ormsby.
Hi, this is Alan Ormsby from AARP Utah.
To have you, Daniel Parkins.
Yes, Daniel Parkins here with Community Wealth Development LLC.
Nice to see you again. Kay Olson.
Hi, Katie Olson with Union Wireless.
Oh, nice to have you too from Union. All right, we've got, did I miss anybody online? Or 5 seconds is up. Okay. We had a few stragglers come in. So we've made introductions around here already. And so Eric, we're gonna start with you because you came in last, and then pick up those that came in just ahead of you.
Eric, I subscribe
Yes, way to go.
here on behalf of Lumen, CenturyLink.
I'm glad you made it,
Thank you.
and you're not too late.
I was on the phone call.
Yeah.
Aaron Wade with Gilmore and Bell. Brad Patterson, Gilmore and Bell.
Nice to have you. Have to hear a little bit more about Gilmore.
Jonathan Forsyth with Comcast.
Great, good. I think we're well represented, and anybody else in the room that we missed? Okay. The last, but not the least, that just walked in, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, Brand Digger, Comcast.
Great. We have a wonderful turnout today. This is probably the most that we've had ever sign up. And so we even expected more people, but that's okay. Because I wouldn't let them order any more food. I said, we always have leftovers. So we will begin right now, an overview of T-Mobile. So we have David Perticizzi. He's the head of state sales for Arizona, Utah, and Idaho. And they will pull it up for David right now.
Excellent, great.
It should pick it up.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. As I mentioned, I'm David Perticizzi, head of state sales for T-Mobile. I support the states of Arizona, Utah, and Idaho. And here I'm going to give you today just a brief overview of some major changes that have happened within our organization. Our industry overall is changing dramatically, and we're very excited for where it's going. We've made a ton of investments. We've made a lot of network changes specifically here in the state, and I'm looking forward to kind of getting you guys up to speed. So go ahead and go to the next slide if you would.
Can I just double check, maybe everyone can hear okay? Did you check with the mic? Did you test it out? Okay, can everyone hear? Okay? I think you're good.
Good, okay.
Yeah, try to project to the back of the room.
Do you want to try
Okay.
with mic?
I'll turn the Italian on. I'll get a little louder.
Sounds good.
So I'll start with some questions. Basically, these are questions I really ask myself. You know, what value could I bring to the alliance? You know, what would you guys want to know? What's important? I'll talk about our dedication to the state. I'll really review our 5G spectrum and a network overview. I'll talk about something that we're excited about, our SpaceX partnership, which is industry changing. I'll share some key topics and value realization that I share with different state departments, and then I'll finally finish with a thank you. All right, go ahead.
They're doing it over
Beautiful.
there.
All right, so questions. Ultimately, I ask myself, how can T-Mobile leverage our network for the good of the state, right? I mean, do the folks in this room and online really know the T-Mobile network story? Because a lot of changes have happened. Are you aware of 600 megahertz in Sprint? So I'll share that stuff with you. We'll talk about our urban core build out of 5G. And then I'll focus really on rural Utah, which is where our network has really grown and focused. You know, ultimately from the alliance, you know, what rural areas can or should we focus on to maximize value? How do the committee members feel we can best partner? I obviously care about that. Rebecca's kind of core to that, but I would appreciate any of the feedback. And then how can T-Mobile take advantage of our statewide infrastructure growth? Those are really the questions that I had in preparing today. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. So really, from a dedication perspective, we've spent over $40 billion in the United States over the last 4 years and have another $40 billion slotted for the next 4. I'm an old Nextel guy. I'm sure some of you may know that company, Nextel, and I lived through the Sprint destruction of that company in 2014. I purposely left the organization because, you know, I had customers for 15 years. They're like, David, we love you, but your service sucks and we got to leave. And I'm like, I get it. So I left the organization for 6 years and purposely came back just over a year ago for these two next pieces here in this second bullet point. Number one, we've integrated the Sprint network into T-Mobile's core. What that's done for us is given us a giant amount of 2.5 megahertz frequency, which is ultimately think of as a giant freeway to run really fast traffic across. So between that integration and taking the sites down that we didn't need, leveraging the sites that they had that we did need, that gave us a real big boost from a network perspective. You tie onto that something I'm even more happy about, which is a purchase of 600 megahertz. So about 4 years ago, we purchased a lot of 600 megahertz. Why that matters in our industry is that the lower the frequency, the further that signal will travel and the better that will penetrate buildings. We are deploying our 5G technology across the entire spectrum of T-Mobile's footprint. So in particular, when we deploy the 600 megahertz across rural parts of the state, it basically takes your tower and extends it 7 times what a standard signal would do. So dramatically improves our rural coverage statewide. So I've talked about that. We are the leader in 5G coverage in the state today. I have dedicated initiatives to support state agencies. One is called Project 10 Million, and as an example, where we're giving reduced or free connectivity to folks in marginalized communities. So an example, working with Liz in the library would be great. Any marginalized communities, we have programs to really give them free or reduced connectivity. In addition to that, we have priority and preemption for our first responding partners through a program called Connecting Heroes, where literally they would kick consumers off the network so that their call could go through first. We have dedicated solutions like connecting people to resources, which is a solution where you're basically locking down a device for a marginalized community and having specific information on that device that's important to them. So basically a lockdown device with a managed set of tools for a community such as refugees, as an example. A community as folks in the child system, a community such as parolees getting out of the penitentiary system. And then also 5G has really put us in a position where we now can offer fixed high-speed internet wirelessly. Offer a discount for government employees. We have huge savings on our contract, which is great. And then I'm basically head to a dedicated team that is just here to support the state. Let's go to the next slide. You got it? All right, let's talk about spectrum. And I touched on this a little bit, but each spectrum frequency band has its own strengths and weaknesses. So most organizations require a combination of these to really meet their performance metrics. So I have competitors in the room. I'm going to be obviously very nice about that. Some competitors have really focused a lot of their 5G deployment across the high band spectrum. The challenge with that, and if you can see here in the slide, is that high band is super fast. It's amazing. But it doesn't travel very far and doesn't penetrate buildings very well. You have the mid band, which is that Sprint spectrum that I talked about. That's that 2.5 megahertz. That's a really good balance between speed and capacity. And then we've got our low band, which is a slower connection, but can go super far. So with many agencies that I've talked to, even a 50, 60 meg connection is much better today than what they're getting at some of their locations across the state. Any questions on that? Does that make sense?
It's 600 megahertz. Can you guys do 50 megabit? Is that?
Yeah, we typically average 50 to 60 megs on the 600 megahertz. Yeah, I've seen a little bit better. I'll talk a little bit about T-Mobile's high-speed internet for home use, but I use it personally. I average 300 meg down every single day.
You're the camera.
All right, I'm doing both. All right, so I want to share some metrics here in the state of Utah. Really, the focus here is the purple. Purple is the area in fiscal year 2022 that we are focused on 5G growth here in the state of Utah. All the other colors are a myriad of our existing 5G and LTE. But what I really wanted to show here is where we're focused. I'm really trying to get into the alliance information and follow this mapping of where the alliance is growing and where the broadband is growing. I want to follow that as well, right? So if we can help marry those, that's something that I'm looking for. But today, over 93% of the population here in the state of Utah is covered in 5G. So pretty great stat. We're really proud of that. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, so 5G has put us in a position where we now can really deliver mission critical based communication wireless. So let's talk about 5G viability. The map here, what I really care about is the green and the purple areas. The green and the purple areas are areas that I've talked to my network team and said, hey, if I were supplying a state of Utah employee connectivity, I need to know where can I supply it? Where are they going to get a quality 5G experience? Green and the purple today is where they're going to get a quality 5G experience. Quite a big portion of the state. So ultra capacity is our purple. That's that Sprint stuff, right? Again, we've deployed that all across our network. We're doing fixed and mobile connectivity solutions. So I was telling a story earlier. Some departments have connections across the state that are using old T1 or copper lines. Those connections can be very expensive, $600 to $700 for these connections. We can replace that in many cases with 5G, assuming we have coverage there, to the tune of $30 a month. So wireless is becoming a viable tool from a speed perspective, from a latency perspective, that can really help in many cases. So a large area of the state's available. Our network availability is improving weekly. Just to give you an idea, 1,000 sites a week in the state of the in the United States. In the state of Utah, we're doing about 8 to 10 new sites a week. So our growth is going there. So from a solution perspective, what can we do with this network, right? That's really what it's all about. So one thing I'm talking to states about is dedicated employee internet. With every state I've talked to, there's a hybrid environment where you have employees working from home, employees working from the office some days of the week, and we're leveraging our internet as a tool for them to have a secure, dedicated solution for state business. But things of that nature, T1 copper line replacements, like I mentioned, Wi-Fi access and connectivity. I'm talking to parks as an example of deploying enterprise grade routers to deliver Wi-Fi access to park members as an example. Connected devices and IoT, again, it's really about what can this 5G network support, and it's a lot technology wise. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next one. Okay, this one's pretty big. Does anyone, just show of hands, has anyone heard this yet? Has anyone seen it? Okay. So we had about a month and a half ago, my CEO and Elon Musk were on stage and they announced this partnership. And I've been in the industry over 20 years and I don't know that I've ever seen something that will really be industry changing. And I do feel that this is it. So in essence, long story short, second quarter of next year, we're gonna be launching T-Mobile based satellites up into the sky. And those T-Mobile satellites will be focused here in the US to deliver connectivity just for T-Mobile. So ultimately, we'll be at a point about third quarter next year where we will start our beta testing of the network, where literally anywhere you can see the sky, you'll be able to receive a text. Anywhere you can see the sky, we can take your GPS location. Anywhere. So that's the beginning of it. And what we expect is that text and location services will start first. It will then go to voice and then potentially data. Obviously, there's testing here, but we've proven this on the ground and we're excited to get those satellites up in the air. So again, anywhere you can see the sky, you got connectivity. Nothing like it today. What's even cooler is that guess what? No cost. Oh, and it's going to work on the existing device that the customers already have. So you may have heard us talk about uncarrier moves. That's one of those moves where we want to make it simple. And we hope that it's changing. So any questions on that? I know it's a kind of interesting, a bit in the future, but we're excited. All right, go ahead to the next slide then. Quickly, I'll talk about some key topics and value realization. I'm looking at time, I think I'm pretty good. So, 5G network viability and modernization. Again, what can we do with it? Hybrid work environments, we talked about that. T1 and copper replacements. A lot of state agencies are looking at, if they haven't already, getting rid of desk phones, right? Why pay for an expensive desk phone if you don't need it? And then I mentioned our Project 10 Million and affordable connectivity programs. That's the free and reduced connectivity. That's the supporting the marginalized communities and also focus on that rural connectivity with 5G. Testing of T-Mobile devices. If anyone in the room, any of the committee members or alliance members, excuse me, would like to do any testing of T-Mobile service, more than happy to support you in that endeavor. If any of you are like, guess what? I've got customers here. We're trying to deliver for them, but I need to know if T-Mobile has wireless network there. Hit me up. I can search any location of the country for us and tell you what our network looks like specifically in that. From a pricing perspective, we're typically 30 to 40% less on state contract, includes a 5G device. We love to get people into compliant devices, obviously that's important. And I always like to look for a department win. Reality in the state is that we're not in a budget crunch here, but most departments are still open to savings, looking at that. I'm always in the position where if I can help a department or an agency to avoid costs with a reduced cost via T-Mobile, what win can I help them deliver, right? So outside of that, so another project, something for whether it's dedicated internet, anything like that, I like to help them find a win. And an example of that is, typically from one of our competitors, we can migrate 25 folks off of that. And our savings is so much that we can integrate 10 dedicated internet connections for the employees. Dedicated support, again, I'm the quarterback to a really deep team. I've got implementation management for white glove support. We can do all kinds of custom billing things. And then finally, a government discounts for all employees. I wanted to thank you. I mean, ultimately, I'm dedicated to our continued network expansion in the state and how I can focus it for the good. So appreciate the time. Any questions? Saw some pictures, appreciate that.
Great.
All right, thank you guys,
Thanks.
appreciate it.
Thanks, David. Good, I think I can hear someone breathing heavy, so make sure you're muted. You're not with us in person, and even if you are, I hope you're, whatever. Let's see, broadband trends, design, funding, and resources. We have Millennium here, Kevin Psyche, Vice President of Broadband Solutions, and Tim Blackburn, Western Region Manager. We need to mute, somebody needs to mute.
That's somebody in the background there.
There we go.
Just wanted to give a little kickoff here. I appreciate the Alliance, previously the Advisory Council. When I joined in 2017, I was not in the industry. So it became such a valuable network for me as we have helped really what we call Connect America and Connect Utah. We have evolved in this industry like many of you have, and that's what I wanted to share is kind of our evolution from a small company into a broadband resource and what that broadband resource could be for an ISP, wireless contractor, government agency, anybody, and just have a good dialogue with that. So I'd like to introduce Kevin Psyche, who's from our Wisconsin office, like I said, Vice President of Broadband Solutions, to jump into it.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everybody. This is an honor. Been to Utah a few times already with Millennium and a few times in other stints. So I'm very happy to be here and be presenting to this group. So I come to you with probably like many of you have 30 plus years in this industry. And here to talk about a little bit about Millennium, but really about you in the room. As everybody's rattling off where they work, I was thinking about how you're a customer of ours. So kind of dovetailing on the T-Mobile gentleman that spoke, we helped T-Mobile deploy their network in Milwaukee, Wisconsin by helping them with their engineering piece. So a lot of people don't think about us as an engineering firm, and I'll touch on that a little bit, but we're really growing with this industry and growing with you. And obviously it's, you know, I'll touch on it here, but Millennium's really part of this industry and everything that's going on in it, right? So everything that we're sitting around whispering about, we're part of that, right? We're part of the background, really not the people out in front, not the ones typically wearing our logo out there. We're the ones helping either your contractors, we're helping you get supplies, as we know how much of a challenge it is on a day-to-day basis. So next slide. So really what I was talking about. So we design, we offer bridge loans. We basically help with procuring and managing materials. And then we help you alleviate capital equipment costs. Next slide. So I love our core values. I've always been the type of employee that hangs their core values up in their office. But I've really grown to love ours, and curious is actually my favorite one. Spend a lot of time asking clients like you, your contractors, the people you work with, a lot of questions to try to understand how you guys operate, how you want to be successful. And the reason that is because when you've been in this industry as long as we have, many of this room, we think we know everything. And I'm thoroughly convinced that there's not an expert in this industry, myself included. So I found myself really quickly not really knowing anything coming from this side of the world in the distribution side and engineering. So I started really asking a lot of questions, understand how the providers are trying to get to what their goal was. Okay, next slide. Again, why we're different. We manage inventory for people. So basically, you name it, we'll help you manage your inventory so you don't have to own it all. Data-driven solutions. And then we do financing as well. Next slide. So this is really how we started, and I have to start off kind of at the beginning, and James Kyle's a CEO and founder of the company. He started off realizing that providers like you needed materials on hand as needed. So he took out from his grandmother. And was able to get material directly for the providers that he was working with. And then we quickly grew into the other divisions of our company. Next slide. You can go to the next slide. So we really do help providers manage their inventory. So we do things on consignment. We'll set up warehouses specific for providers. We'll have all of the material on hand ready to go when it's needed. So I can stand here telling you that we are a true partner in this industry. So we do everything we can, in all of the divisions that have been created within Millennium are direct reactions to what our clients were asking for and needed specifically. So on a daily basis, we're working with our providers to make sure that the materials that they need are on hand. And people like Jeremy are constantly looking to help other providers as needed. And so if some material gets delayed because of whatever project, we're quickly talking internally to kind of figure out where that material needs to go next. Next slide. Again, our leasing, next slide. So our renting and leasing is led by Joe Ballin, and basically gives all providers, I think just about everybody in here has probably rented, leased, or purchased equipment. So we're able to get our clients equipment when they need it for any period of time that they need. So typically if something breaks, gets lost, you guys have technicians out there. I used to have technicians that worked for me. They were typically losing equipment, and it's a great place to come to us. If you need something last minute, we're able to rent it to you or lease it to you if you need it quickly. Next slide. So I'm a veteran. I'm very proud of this, and this is why I leave it in the slides, is that we have the ability to provide materials through our veteran supply division. So if you need a small business requirement, this is an arm of our company that's led by a disabled veteran. And so we can take care of those solutions through that part of our company if needed. And then the next one, our geospatial team, you can bump another slide here. Our geospatial team is probably near and dear to my heart. They're super nerdy, and I consider myself a nerd as well. So they're able to take GIS, we're every partner, and basically do data-driven solutions. And that's where I specifically mentioned our T-Mobile build in Milwaukee. We worked with, we helped T-Mobile and all their contractors work together as one unit. And we created a dashboard for T-Mobile to see what was going on a daily basis. So they could go in there and see what projects were being held up, what contractors were slower, which contractors were faster, and getting done with their work timely to basically come up with a game plan for when that project was going to be completed. So that just gives you kind of an insight for what we actually do. We're not an engineering firm as you would traditionally think of us. We're more of a data solutions through some engineering tools. Next slide. So funding opportunities, I think we're all very aware of these. Millennium has a handshake agreement with Widelity. For those of you that do not know who Widelity is, they wrote the Huawei Rip and Replace program, basically get rid of the Huawei equipment. They also help providers get funding and manage it, and they'll come in at any phase of the project. So if they weren't there on the front end to help get the funding and the person got the funding, they'll help manage it. And then in some cases, in a couple cases more recently, they've helped providers actually protest where the funding went. So they'll actually write protests. So they get a lot of swearing and hollering and screaming, and then you put in a nice formal letter that gets sent to the funding agency. So they're a great partner of ours, and it's not anything that we're in front of or get in between you and Widelity. We're just really a handshake agreement with them, and they're brought in to help with the funding piece of it. So this is a great opportunity for us to work with our providers at a gap that we did not have.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I won't get yelled at and sworn at. You're gonna take send
Yeah.
nice letters instead.
Yeah, send nice letters instead. That's the idea behind it. And that's why I try to coach our clients, that especially some of them that have been really frustrated. I'm like, all right, like calm down. And Brooke Coleman, who we work with primarily, Her and I will get on a call with them and basically formalize the letter that's sent to the funding agency, just to say, hey, we're providing service in this area. And of course, the new FCC filing, I think, is going to help with some of that. But in any event, I just wanted to kind of touch on this, that this is part of what we do. And then the next slide.
Do our best not to get in glass.
Yeah, but we can help with that, and just know that we're a resource. So this is one of our unique pieces of our business. So we have a Millennium Infrastructure Fund. You go next slide. And what this is we brought together a group of private investors that are considered limited partners. So there's a lot of equity partners in this industry right now. This is a solution for our providers that do not want to give up equity in their company. So we brought together investors, and we basically just expanded the infrastructure fund from $30 million to $75 million. And the reason we did that is because obviously the incoming funding between BEAD and what we hope to be the next round of Reconnect, obviously looks like to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 to $40 billion for the next 4 years, obviously extending the next 2 to 3 years after that. So we really wanted to help providers kind of bridge that gap between their funding programs or potential revenue to help them out. So what we do is we work with the providers to come up with like essentially short-term loans, and then also working with our investors. So it is a higher interest rate than what most of you are accustomed to. The kicker is that since it's often tied to whatever funding source on the back end, there's no principal payments required for the term of the loan. And it can be anywhere from 12 months to 36 months to 60 months. So we're actively helping many providers with their funding, which brings me to my next slide. We're located all over the United States right now. We're adding locations as we speak. And I want to call out that Utah is essentially the headquarters for our Western region. We're expanding to Idaho, and then we're basically looking at some locations somewhere in and around either Washington and or California. And then we're already turned up a location in Pennsylvania, which is on there, I see. And then we're looking at Virginia and North Carolina, among other places I'm probably forgetting. So next slide. So one of the things that I wanted to touch on today, and this is how involved we get with our clients, is that I think everybody here gets this, right? We start with an idea, we research it, we come up with, we turn the idea into a plan, and then we execute the plan. Pretty simple, right? So it's really weird to be talking about Paul when he's in the room here, but Paul and I have worked closely together on basically his plan to feed Harriman, right? I mean, we've spent countless hours on the phone, kind of walking through his plan and, figuring out what and how he can be successful. I think you've used just about every resource that we have, I think, in some way, shape or form. So Paul is faced with a new lawyer in Harriman, or the city lawyer, basically, who interprets some of the state laws a little differently than how I think many of us in the room interpret the laws. Okay, so next slide. So the city attorney basically reads this article right here, that Paul does not fit the description as a public utility provider. So Paul has been providing service in Harriman for, he says 7 years, but quite honestly, his history goes back to the late 90s as far as providing broadband in Harriman. So the city attorney sees this specific title, chapter, and section as not specifically describing Paul and the services he provides, because he's only a broadband provider. So I wanted to share this today because this is some of the challenges that is not unique to Harriman or Utah or even, other states in the United States. We're seeing this more and more in the United States, where people are basically splitting hairs when it comes to some of the laws out there and making it difficult for providers like Paul to deploy broadband. And so I was hoping that this group here would kind of take pause and realize that this is a challenge that's kind of creeping up in different places. And I wanted to spell out this one kind of use Paul as an example of how difficult it is as a provider to provide broadband when you have, city attorneys and stuff, looking at a statute like this that doesn't specifically say broadband. And so he feels that maybe Paul doesn't fit the right definition of a provider that can be in the utility easement. So that's really my last slide. You can go to the next one, and it's really the first one, but I'm open for questions. You guys are easy. Thank you, appreciate it.
We do have some questions that you probably could answer about supply chain, but we're gonna get delve into that a little bit later with Brett, so I'm gonna save that. And move on next to Helios. Data above and beyond, so we've got Bill Larson, the CEO, and Alan Larson.
I'm assuming.
Somebody still needs to mute. Check everybody that's online, just for me, for all of us, just check your little mics and make sure they're red and have a line through them. Thank you.
Come on, people.
Unlike David, we're not Italian, so you just have to open up your ears a little bit. He's got big lungs, so hopefully we can get him across. Charles, you hear us okay?
Yeah, just project.
Project. We're Norwegian.
That is.
Yeah, we're Norwegian, we're Vikings, so we yell, but we're using up good words. Again, I'm Phil Larson, the CEO of Helios Drones Data Solutions. We have drones in our title only because we use them as a tool. And if we're for SEA reasons, you can search us and find improved drones. We work all over the world, United States, India, Nigeria, Africa, Congo, Malaysia, all over Europe. We've been in, Helios is relatively new. It's a collection of multiple groups who are, again, all worked in different sectors of the government, from DOD to CAG officers to forward operating personnel, things like that. We all in the business of collecting data. That's what we did before. This is what we do now. We use drones as a tool to do that. What's essential about what I'm going to try to talk to you guys about, and Alec and I will mention this a little bit as we go through, is data is only as good as the people who are using it. And when you're using to collect a tool like what we do, the different tools that we do to collect data, the importance is that you're getting all of that data in the one visit, right? It's always hard for when you come back and say, like if you hire a drone company to go out and take pictures, they're going to go out and take some pictures for you. You're going to get a nice picture. You might get a 4K video or something like that you can look at and zoom in on, screen capture a slide or two out of, but you miss the whole thing. Because you flew out the right bird. Now I can do a 3D model of your structure. Now I can do the RF mapping of your structure. Now I can do all the demarcs of your structure. I can do all your fiber runs. I can do all that stuff in the same flight. So why wouldn't you have me just do it all and then just warehouse the rest, right? Use it at your advantage. So we work with all the different, in all these countries, we work with telecom, broadcast, government agencies, financial institutions on RF mapping and different fiber runs and things like that. So next slide, please. Right, get the logo. Okay. You can push play on that. That'll move while we talk. Okay, so again, back to the importance of doing certain things. A lot of you all have probably seen some of this before. This is just basically 3D mapping. The importance of 3D mapping is if we're going to go out and we're going to fly a structure and we're flying it for just a particular reason, we're out there to collect data. And so we're going to collect the data. We'll fly it. We'll grab this 3D image, which we can turn and rotate and even scale. In some instances, we're the only ones globally that I know of, or at least today, and that could change within an hour. Who knows? Our industry changes quite frequently, but we actually can do 3D models up to 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 feet. It doesn't matter. Right, and they're scalable. Well, why is that important? Well, because scalability comes down to, like in your world, Dave, is going to be, I want to change, do a structure modification, right? I want to be able to scale it without sending a climber out there to climb it. I'm a huge fan on needless climbs in the tower industry. I've spoken all over the world to different telcos in different industries, WIA, NATE, you name it. And with Brandon Carr, we've met with numerous times on this. But the point is, I don't see a needless climb being a valuable asset, because at the end of the day is if I can send a drone out there who can collect all that data, get all the imagery, get all the scale, get everything you're going to need to make a bomb, to make all your price points that you need for that work to be done, and nobody gets hurt, that's a win-win for all of us, right? And I believe that our personnel, because our infrastructure is so shallow in our build out right now, that we need to be using those to keep the build out going, building the equipment we need versus going out and taking a picture. So 3D modeling is one of them. 2Ds, and this is where this comes into play for like the fiber and different things like that. We can go out and do it. Doesn't matter if it's a 5 mile area, if it's a 50 mile or 500 mile, 5,000 mile, it doesn't matter. We can go out and give you complete terrain mapping of all the things. We can do all the layout, all the infrastructure of current power, current water, gas, you name it, and give you a complete topographical map of all of that, where that's running. So it allows your fiber runs to be, more precise. And then we can demark it, hand box it, do all those things out across the board. So that's 2D and 3D mapping. We do a lot of mining. We do that in Congo is one of the places that we're working with the mining things, where we're actually doing LiDAR mining, where we go in and do the complete mapping of the mining, pull out volumes of materials, so we can know how many truckloads, how much is this and how much is that, kind of a thing. So that's kind of what we do in that 2D and 3D and a little bit of LiDAR. Go switch, please. Okay, thank you. All right, so RF mapping, very simple. And Alec, I'll let you jump in here. Alec is he's my son. He's got the same last name, so that would be kind of ironic. Alec's been flying and working in this industry for well over a decade. He's no stranger to anything when it comes to telecom or RF frequency by any stretch. If it emits a signal, it can be collected, period. So we can collect it. We can collect it through numerous tools that we use. We do that with the satellite. We do that in the telecom and the broadcast and whatnot.
Yeah, so my wife hates this. Whenever somebody asks her what her husband does, she says he plays with toys all day long. And it's true. I use my thumbs to make money. And at the end of the day, if it broadcasts any signal, I can map it. I can tell you exactly where exactly it's hitting, how well it's hitting that area. If there's a null in your signal, I will find it. The great part about RF mapping is it's applicable to almost everything. I can figure out exactly where your towers are hitting. I can figure out how well your antennas are working. I used to be a tower climber myself. I can tell you that installation, meh, doesn't always go perfectly, right? There are issues with your antennas. There are issues with the signal actually being carried out to your customers. I can find them. We partnered up with another company out of Australia with some proprietary equipment that we attach to our drones as a way of collecting data that before was usually a guy with a truck, a 30-foot pole driving around the United States trying to figure out exactly where the signal is. Now, 30 feet is a joke, right? I can fly up to 500 meters, get the better data, right around the tower and understand it tenfold, okay? 500 meters, just being an example, I can fly way higher than that. Satellites, not much, we're working on it. But there's some limitations with, air. But yeah, we are very excited about the RF portions of what we can do. We're working on several different projects. Rip and replace being one of them.
We work with Brooke Coleman as well, over at Widelity.
Very cool.
And so we're on the same handshake deal, I think, with them,
like a
her and Mike with us, to be able to deliver, again, the data and the results that are needed in the rip and replace part of it, right? Just so we can ascertain and get that program running. Okay, next slide, please. So one of the other things that we do because of our backgrounds, and you and I met at the DoD, so you understand where I'm coming from here, is basically we can help in any aspect of the law enforcement, the state agencies, search and rescue, in regards to doing everything basically. So if it's we worked with Lockheed Martin to build out the first police drone that came out of the back of a trunk, minute and a half setup and flying and chasing people, you know, through the air and using signatures of heat and things like that to be able to track them. And we do the search and rescue. The search and rescue is one of my closest to my heart, as you mentioned, Kevin, earlier, something that was dear to your heart. Search and rescue is dear to my heart. The reason is that if you got the right tool with the right operators, you can go out and find people that are in serious need. And if you have the right airframes, you can go out and find them, and then you can even drop them supplies to survive enough time for some people to get there. So search and rescue is a big thing for me. And T-Mobile, I got to give my hats off to you. You just put a tower up in the Uintas that was on the backside of a country that there was no signal, and they had more search and rescue calls up there because and people were getting hurt because they couldn't get out in time to get help that they needed, even the ones that knew. So you guys worked with Heather Gunstrom up there, and she put that together for us. So that's a really unique piece. We do this all over the world. We've worked with different countries, India being one of them, putting together law enforcement and a first responder program. Our first responder program is very, very unique. As a retired rescue chief out of Virginia, for those of us who live out in Virginia or been out in Virginia, the fire service out there was a volunteer fire service, and I thought I needed more activity in my life, so I joined. I spent a good portion of a couple decades doing that. Retired rescue chief from that program. One of the things that I always found interesting is that we're still old school. We're still doing everything whiteboard. We're still doing everything by pass tags that came off of engines, with your name on them and one upside down for the driver, kind of a thing. It was kind of a crazy thing. So we actually developed an asset management program that worked with first responders to where the actual asset was the first responder. Not so much of their equipment, not so much of the trucks or anything like that, but of the actual person himself. So we actually put an RFID type chip on them where we can track them using a tethered drone off of the engines. And now we can track them where they're going through fireground operations, whether it be an MPA, motor vehicle accident, excuse me. We can actually track them. Now we can even take it a step further. We use a biometric vest. We can now track their heart rate and their respiratory. So I know if they're in trouble. So if they're doing 200 over 100 on their BP, they need to sit down, right? They need some water, go to rehab. These are things that we're not seeing because we're all like me. I'll go until my adrenaline says no more. And then we get in trucks and the firefighters are dying, right? This is a common thing. It happens all the time. So we wanted to develop a program that we could work with the first responders on, and that's what we came up with, and it seems to be working so far. We're moving it forward. Next slide, please. Okay, so our tethered drones. This is the tethered drone feature has a lot of use cases, and I'm going to talk just about a couple of them. So we use tethered drones in the smart city application, where we can actually put up a drone, sit there and measure traffic, measure speeds and lights and all that good stuff. We do that for traffic monitoring. And then the wireless nodes. So that's the next big thing. So if we're looking at rural wireless, where we're talking about how we're trying to get to fiber into a certain area, but we need to use nodes or a wireless node of the fiber connection to get out into rural areas that just aren't feasible, these things offer a solution to do that as a tethered unit. They can run for days on end, and they're designed to run for days on end. That can go out and use as a node system to relay that or connect to the 5-point system together, whatever that system may look like. And we'll help design that. We're from this industry, so we get it on how to build that up. And it's 100% remote. That's the other key thing here, is that you don't need an operator to go out and maintain the box. You don't need somebody to do that. You just have a service that has to be maintained, obviously, but everything else is connectivity. It's done through satellite, which you'll find interesting because I have to have that satellite, and then the wireless application, which is the cellular application. So all the programming, it can be picked up and flown at any time by the person remotely from anywhere in the world with less than a second of latency, right? So that's the best part, is that he can actually fly a bird from the state of Utah in Malaysia, right? That's where he did it. So with a less than a second of latency, just like he's flying it there. So that's the best part about having a tethered unit. We're actually working with NBC. NBC has got a tethered unit that we're building for them. It's actually for their weather system. So it actually has a PTZ camera on it, so they can look and see and zoom and move around and then be able to collect the weather data. And then it's also a detachable unit, which is remotely detachable, and can fly away. And the operator now can actually move towards the scene or do whatever he wants to do with that remote application. Again. Okay. Well, we only said 15 minutes, so we're pretty short. Up here on the far right, you can see this is one of our pattern readings. Alec, if you want to explain that, because you should have that red line in that one.
Yeah, all right, so this is a, it's kind of small, so hopefully all you got your glasses. This is a pattern that I would pick up around a broadcast tower. This is a TV signal that is being portrayed. It's a peanut shape, kind of a little terminology thrown at you, peanut. But you can see that there's a red dot, right? And that is what the manufacturer says is going to be portrayed. That's what this customer specifically purchased when he purchased, or he or she purchased this antenna, okay? That's the red line. And then the black line is the data that I picked up. They are operating pretty well. It follows a pretty good idea of that same pattern. There were a few different things with power in certain areas, and that was because they had maybe a lower frequency or something that didn't quite make it past a few obstacles, right? So there's a few things, but overall pretty good. Now we can give you that data, and we can tell you exactly where it's hitting, the power that it's hitting it in those specific places. We have different customers and things like that call in and say, hey, I'm not getting any signal here. We can run this test. We can go out into the field, pick up another drone, smaller drone, and actually pick up the signal strength, right? That's something that I've actually really come to love is finding the little holes that nobody expects to be missing.
Okay, so on this bottom left, one of the things that we helped Duke Energy and Dominion Energy out of Virginia develop was a high power tension line inspection. It was done via helicopter. Broadband also used, or broadcasters used helicopter as well. It's become quite antiquated in this respect of collecting data. The helicopter has a 30-degree limitation, can only fly so close without static electricity. The drone doesn't care. The drones that we've developed they're all shielded and they're protected from this, and we don't have the flyaway issues. We don't have any of that because of our designs on these. But we can go out and be able to check out insulators, bullet holes, woodpecker things, anything else. We can find all of that because we can fly it. Now, can we fly as fast as a helicopter? No. Well, we can, but can we see anything? We're getting there. Can we see anything? No. All right, so, but we look good going down, flying away, but but we're able to go up and around and go through and see things. Cotter pins missing, right? This is a big thing for the power companies. The cotter pin is missing. Well, that's a big deal. So we're able to see that. That's the data that we're able to find using different tools. Over here is our solar fields. We do a lot of solar fields in regards to isolation of the bad cells that are in there. We actually can go down and tell you exactly what the power loss in there is in that particular one power cell. We can actually tell you where it's running, how it's running, if it's covered in sand, not covered in sand, yada, yada, yada. But we can tell you the exact loss, right? What's your deficiency in your output. Through that, again, this is one of our tethered units up here. I think it's important to note, Helios is a data collection company, and we collect data through different means and tools. We're showing you a lot of drone stuff right now, because right now the drones is answering the mail for a lot of the broadband stuff, because we're able to get out and get that data and show you what's where and what's not there. But then we can actually help with the formation of the plans and mapping and runs and everything associated to getting this problem resolution.
It's more or less just what makes us different.
Yeah,
I mean, anybody can really. Everybody has, well, not everybody, but most people have two legs. They can go out, they can actually pick up the data themselves. Flying drones in a specific manner with the correct equipment. It takes a little bit more knowledge and know-how. And that's kind of why we're pushing more drones than other means of data collection.
So that's what we do. Any questions for us? So we got a great story or two to tell you. Thank you for having us.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm sure feeling a lot of passion in the room. So far, everybody's very, very passionate about what they do and can provide, and I think that there's a lot of wonderful resources. It's so great to have this right here in Utah. So close. So close to home. Next we have Marion Clayton. She's the Director of Research and Development for IsoTrust Towers. And she will be presenting on ultra lightweight towers for isolated areas and mobile applications.
Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for inviting us to come. So I'm from IsoTrust. We're a tower designer and producer here in Springville. And our towers probably look a little bit different than what you're used to. Start with this video that kind of introduces our product and what's unique about it. And there was some fancy thing.
Those are pretty well.
Steel hasn't really innovated itself much over the last century.
Metals are pretty well understood and they're used in a lot of places, but composites are the new world of material science. We know that IsoTrust is the material of the future. What began as a research project at a university has grown into a business with the potential to disrupt the entire world.
I developed a lot of experience in composite materials, composite structures. Ultimately began working on what became known as the IsoTrust structure.
The geometry of IsoTrust is unique because it's an open lattice, open grid structure.
Not only does IsoTrust use composite materials, but there is this geometry that takes advantage of the uniqueness of composite materials.
We're up to 12 times as strong as steel, or 12 times lighter.
There's this constant work that we're doing on the engineering and R&D side to be able to create these structures. We're continually looking at ways to improve it.
We have a focus on thoroughly understanding our product and testing it.
Our testing consists of everything from very, very small test pieces to full tower sections, and that data is being gathered and reported so that we can show not only the testing and standard organizations, but our clients that we have a robust industrial grade product. We've already tested in the real world our structures against typhoons and hurricanes. They're performing perfectly for that environment. We can beat steel on its lifetime costs. They're lighter weight than any steel structure out there, and we can meet all the design standards required for these infrastructure projects.
It's disruptive, it's a game changer, environmental friendly, stronger than steel.
The imagination is the limit of the types of applications that an IsoTrust structure could fill.
Over the past century, we've lived in an economy that's been dominated by steel. The next 100 to 200 years will be dominated by IsoTrust. Our mission is to build the sustainable infrastructure of tomorrow.
Hey, I'll just add that I'm happy to take questions along the way if you want to ask. Go ahead. I wanted to show you just a couple of things that projects that we've done recently, and then, sorry, I'm quiet, I'll try to be louder, and then just kind of what we're hoping to do in the future. So most recently, this was a really exciting installation with the Bureau of Land Management in Wyoming just a few months ago. And they had this communications tower up on a mountain, so really hard to get to, only accessible in the summer. And you can't get a crane up there to install the thing. And they had these like really lightweight steel structures that kept breaking. And so they contacted us and we were able to custom build a tower that fit right on to their existing structure. We could put it It says the audio is muted. Am I okay? Okay. We've had a lot of, because of the corrosion problems, we have had some traction in Southeast Asia because they have lots of typhoons and lots of humidity. And so steel towers don't last very long. So this is a rooftop installation in the Philippines, and they also have really high wind speeds, so like 175 miles per hour is what we're designing to there. This one is a rooftop, like I said, and then this one is a greenfield installation, and these towers are doing great, and we're excited to continue doing stuff over there. This is an American Tower demo, so in North Carolina. And it was exciting to see just the installation process. You can imagine if you have a super lightweight tower, it's just easier to move around, easier to get into the hole and to set up. And so that is nice for the installation crews. And then here is a tower 18 meters in Vietnam. And I'll just add, I'm in research and development. So we've got some other projects going on too in our research and development pipeline. We are looking to develop like a lighter cell on wheels, so that's easier to set up and take down. We are looking at putting this like tower structure as the reinforcement in concrete, so you not only have the tower, but also less concrete and a smaller hole that you have to dig. And then we're also looking to kind of expand craneless installation to do taller and beefier towers with that. And with those projects, we always need people who are willing to like try the technology as like a proof of concept. So if that's something that you're interested in, we'd be really happy to talk and also just get feedback of how we can continue to develop our technology to make it make sense for rural places and get towers in more places that especially that are harder to get to right now. So any questions, please?
Excuse me, I was just wondering, you talked about the carbon fiber not being impacted by elements like metals are. But I'm wondering, what is the degradation of carbon fiber? Is it basically just imperfections in production, or are there other causes?
Yeah, that's a really excellent question. Yeah, so fatigue is not a very big deal. So like wind bending, we are currently like literally have samples in UV testing right now, and it's like a 7-month long process. So that's something that we're interested in, but so far it's looking pretty good. And so we're not quite sure. We haven't found anything yet that's affecting it, but that's a great question. Thank you.
Do you mind if I ask a follow-up? You used the bikes as examples. What does the bike weigh without a solid carbon fiber tubing? What does your ISO truss?
Yeah, maybe like 5 pounds or something. Like I'm not very strong, but I can lift it easily. Yeah. Was there another hand? Yeah.
Yeah, there was I don't know how to even ask the question. There was a predecessor to this called GeoStrut down in Springville.
Yeah.
And we tried one of those towers. I'm sure it's different than this, but what we noticed is on the metal monopoles with our cranes, if we accidentally bump a metal tower, you get it dent.
Mm-hmm.
But this stuff, is it really rigid? How would it handle up to an impact? Like, does it just shatter, or is it able to dent?
Yeah, so it's very strong, like you can stand on it. I wish I.
Is it static? You know how metal bends if you dent it?
Right, it is,
But
it's
this-
more of
once
a
it- Once
rigid.
it's been hit, is it lose its structure? The GeoStrut would crack and lose its structure if you dent it. Is this support, like, is it a static structure that as soon as it bends, it's broken? Is that how that works? Or is it
Yeah.
like a flex?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It is much more stiff than steel, so it will like crack. But if we go back to, you have all of, this is a better picture. You have like a whole bunch of different triangle shapes. So if you break one, then the tower's still okay.
Neat, okay.
Yeah, so it's got some like redundancy in the structure. Yeah, any other questions? Yeah.
What about for tower climbers?
Right, yeah, so that they can just climb the tower. You don't need additional structure. We're just, in a couple weeks here, we're donating to a Learning Alliance Center. I don't know if that's like a well-known place in Florida. They just have like towers for people to climb, and they were willing to take 2 of our towers. So we'll have them down there and people can go practice climbing up and down, but you don't need extra stuff in addition to just this lattice structure.
Real quickly, just to follow up on him in regards to the climbers, is there a safety cable climb, a setup on it? I mean, do you have designated climbing leg? Is it just free for all climb? Is there a cable?
You can hook in, I'm sorry, I'm not super familiar with this, but you can hook into the structure itself, and then it's all just safe enough to climb. There's not like a specific section. that answer your question?
It's-
I'm sorry.
Sounds like you just have to clip on as you go up.
Right,
You
yeah.
can't hook onto a
That's,
cable.
that's the
Yes,
100%
yes.
tie off, right, that we all know is the 100% tie off, right? But
Thank you.
yeah, that isn't, I don't know, where's my telecom guys? Isn't it not required to have a safety cable? I think it is. I think you have to have a safety cable within a center and still be 100% tied off, right? Okay. I'm just checking. Other than that, I love it. I think it's a great structure.
Thanks. Yeah.
What about the inside wiring? How, do you have a picture of how that is?
Right, pathways, cable run.
Yeah, cable management. Right.
So it's maybe more exposed than in a monopole, but it's.
Yeah, so we've been thinking about that as well, because you, especially at the bottom, right, don't want it to be exposed to people. So we haven't figured this out yet, but some of our ideas is just to like create a wrapping, 20 feet at the bottom or something like that, so that it's covered. But yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions? Yeah.
How does it, are they repaired? Like if it was damaged, can you repair just a section or? I mean, once it's broken, you don't want it to just be broken, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think right now, if the towers, it would still be performing well enough that we haven't had to address that question. But I think one of the things that's also interesting is that they're very modular pieces, so it would be possible to take off, like to trade out one section as opposed to the whole thing. But that is a good question too. Any other questions? Yeah.
I can't find a price for these. Am I allowed to ask? Like you sell them, I'm assuming modular 10-meter, 10-foot sections, you know about how much?
Yeah, I don't have good prices. So this is, this is Sam. Oh, that's not, there it is. Sam is our sales guy. So if you email him, it depends so much on like the wind loading and how much stuff you're putting on the tower, but he will get you actual prices. Just for comparison, it tends to be just the price of the tower, a little bit more expensive than steel. But when you take into account the reduction in cost and installation with it being lightweight, they end up being about the same.
Steel's crazy right now. So sorry to interrupt.
Right.
So is this carbon fiber impacted by the same supply chain
It's
issues?
not, no.
Thank you.
Those are good questions. What's your lead time?
Yeah, also a good question. I'm sorry, I'm in research and development. We're ready to go. Like I was also gonna say, if any of you want to come see our facility in Springville and see how it works, we're super happy to have you, but we've got, people and equipment that are ready. So I think I'll let you talk to Sam about that and he can give you an accurate answer. Yeah.
Really quickly, looking at a complete system, with the tower at the base here, have you looked at doing any other componentry that adds to the tower, such as swing arms, mounts, that the antennas would go onto so that you can not have a steel?
Right, we have.
Steel too, your structure.
Yeah, like, so getting rid of everything that's metal, so you don't have to worry about anything corroding. Yeah, that's definitely.
The reason I ask is we check for pitting, we check. for
Exactly,
all these different
yeah.
Failures in structures, monopoles, they twist and they turn, they do everything they want to do, the sunflower effect. But, so if you had all of that, I just want to know if that was something in your pipeline, just because that would be.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's challenging, but we're ready to take on the challenge. We're working on it. Yeah.
I know that Utah has a really big composites manufacturing industry.
Yeah.
Is this material made in Utah?
It is, yeah. Yeah, our material comes from TCR Composites, that's in Utah. Any other questions? Well, thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you for all your questions.
You've done great. Thank you so much. Yes, unfortunately, Sam couldn't come to the meeting today to answer all the other half of the questions, but it looks like we've got everybody that's really interested and wanting to support your research and development as well as see that project get out. It's interesting. My husband actually works for TCR Composites, so he's an engineer there, and I had met IsoTrust before, and then he sent me an email later going like, hey, have you heard about this company? You gotta, Anyway, I'm not selling their product either. But that did remind me of that. Wonderful. This has been so interesting so far. Brad, you're up. I've asked Brad to present today. He's the past president of the Utah Rural Telecom Association. Looks like I put an E on the end and gave it a little French word. So URTA. And I asked him to address specifically in regards of the internet service providers, the supply chain, workforce for the ISPs and the BEAD. So broadband grant program. I'm not going to try to remember what the BEAD stands for. I said it wrong the last time. So I'm not
Vikram can tell us exactly what the BEAD stands for. He's coming up.
He's the one that corrected me the
Yeah,
last
so-
time.
I'm actually going to focus mostly on the supply chain and workforce because Vikram's here. He can talk to some of the digital equity and things like that. A lot of that's still being determined on and how the funding's going to go. But you know what isn't being determined is this, and I am not passionate about supply chain and workforce issues. I hate them. I think we all hate them, except there's some people who keep me honest in here. Comstar, Millennium, who else is in here? Which is good. So we're going to get to that point in it. Unfortunately, the pandemic, well, and before I get into that, supply chain and workforce is everything, right? I'm going to focus on fiber optics, but it's the grocery store, it's fixed wireless, it's everything, it's gas, it's everything we're working with nowadays. But I'm going to focus this more on fiber optics, but we're seeing the exact same thing in the fixed wireless side of our business, the availability of product and those types of things. And some of the tools to mitigate it that we're going to talk about today have been helpful across the board. So unfortunately, the pandemic created a storm of challenges for deploying broadband. You know, there was a 10% give or take excess cable supply in 2019. And now we're dealing with raw material shortages, skilled labor shortages, but that are causing significant delays in the supply chain. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So the national transition to fiber broadband is underway and progressing rapidly. And you can see some statistics there. It was an increase of 12% in 2021. The demand's high. There's lots of funding mechanisms that we're all hearing about. They're going to come out and come into place. So why is fiber deployment across the country not happening more rapidly? Supply chain. Go ahead to the next one. So there's some components to the supply chain. Here's some of the most common ones: raw material shortages, component shortages, labor shortages, increased costs, and shipping and logistical delays. So for the raw materials, fiber optic glass, you know, obviously the main component of making a fiber line, the glass itself is not in short supply. There's ample domestic production of that, and manufacturers are building out capacity for even more. But all fiber optic cables are jacketed. They have other materials in them. Many of those materials are plastic or plastic derivatives, so they're petroleum and resins, and they're strongly, you know, resins are strongly linked to petroleum, and we all know what's happening with petroleum. Other components like the steel, aluminum, and copper that are required to produce the cabling are in shorter supply, and not only just in shorter supply, have experienced incredibly rapid price increases. So, you know, you think of it as just fiber, it's not just the glass. There's a lot more to it. So that's the raw materials, so components. And we heard about this with vehicles, trucks, all the other stuff, you know, just chips, computer chips, semiconductors, those types of things. They're currently experiencing 52 to 80 week lead times. And then a lot of them just aren't going to be produced anymore. The ones that they were using in the past, they're just not going to produce them anymore. So you have to go through software development, rewrite the code, change all of those things to do it. So then you have component shortages. And then we'll focus on labor shortages a little bit later, but the supply chain as far as logistics, and I mean, this is a huge problem, is the logistics and getting the product. So now it's made, now you got to get it out there. And I have to reach this so I don't speak to it wrong, but in April 2022, 20% of the 9,000 globally active container ships were actually stuck outside of port. They couldn't even unload. Almost a full 30% of that backlog was created by Chinese ports alone. So the other thing, domestically produced goods are still having trouble reaching where they're supposed to go. The American Trucking Association had a deficit of 80,000 truck drivers at the end of 2021. And as trucks is the way 72% of American freight is transported over trucks. Now, we have something cool happening here in Utah that's gonna help us a little bit, and that's the inland port. As it continues to go, that's gonna help us some. The freight's gonna get unloaded, it's gonna end up here. And it's gonna be local truck, luckily, that will take it out from there. So, next slide. Okay, lead time, summer of 2022. You can see that fiber optic cable, 52 to 60 weeks. Fiber cabinets and splitters, 10 to 20 weeks. FSTs, 20 to 35 weeks. Conduit, 15 to 20, handholds, 22 to 26. And then the CPE that goes in the home, 3 to 6 month lead time. So now we're gonna play a game. So hopefully this works. Good, it's worked. So only press the space bar one more time. Okay. What is the lead time in weeks for these products? We have
2 to 3 weeks.
gift cards.
Oh.
We have gift cards. So this data, as Millennium, Comstar, or anyone else, some on the bridge can attest to, it's not always going to be consistent. So this came in as of Monday. This was yesterday. I got the lead times as of yesterday. Now, knowing they may have product on the ground. So your lead time might actually be 0 if they have product on the ground. This is the manufacturer, so I've listed the manufacturer. This is if you have to go to the manufacturer for an order. Okay, 1 space bar. 1.25" Duraline conduit. Okay, we're gonna go in weeks. Okay, 17, little.
4 months, 4 months.
Not yet, in weeks though, because I'm not doing the math.
20 weeks. 28.
20 weeks.
I'm an insider. That's
I know, I know. I was gonna make you guys exempt, but go ahead and hit space. There you go. Next one. CommScope MSTs.
12.
26.
Ooh, so close to the 22. a little bit.
25, 24.
24. Who said 24 first? There we go. Go ahead on that one. Next one, Duralite handholds, and these are really nice. One guy can pick up a Duralite handhold instead of the ones we used to have.
18.
Okay, I gotta look first. Okay, go ahead.
29.
21.
Lower than 20,
8 to 10.
17.
little bit higher than, oh, lower than 27, just, oh, she said it, 26, 26.
So I'm able to really say like 5 things.
Yeah, you can. I'm not. So now we're gonna get really quick. Okay, so now this will tell you, and this comes later on in the, what's gonna happen in these next two comes as a very important part in the mitigation strategy.
51.
Sterlite fiber is not, this is
52.
loose tube, Sterlite fiber.
16.
30.
Not available.
10.
What strength count? What strength count? They won't.
I didn't do a strain.
22.
Up a little bit,
24.
little bit more.
25.
25. Okay. Going. Now, here's the whole reason for this. And it's gonna be in the way a little bit in the bottom bar, but AFL ribbon fiber.
It's 53, 60, 2 years.
60. 70.
70. Who said 70? Lynn said 70. 70 weeks. Okay. Yeah. So, and there's a reason for that too. So mitigation strategies, go ahead to the next slide. Yeah. So, yeah, so we're facing this perfect storm of supply chain issues. And how do you solve it? There isn't one smoking gun to solve it. It's a multifaceted approach, and obviously what worked for us, there may be other things that work for other people. So hopefully, rather than question and answer, because I saw what you did to her, we're just gonna share other things we're doing to mitigate it. So at the end, but so there's ways you can do this to protect yourself from the impact of shortages. Next slide. Relationship building with your distributors, manufacturers, those types of things. Literally build the relationships. I drove up here today with my distributor, one of them, right? Because we'll talk about that in a minute too. So build it, discuss long-term plans, make sure that you're communicating, make sure they understand, make sure that you have a relationship where they can be honest, right? And tell you the honest truth of what the things are going to be. Next one. Oh, capacity build out. So this is less something we can do and more something the manufacturers can do. And you can go ahead to the next slide on this one. So capacity build out is a big thing. OFS Optical, they had started to increase domestic cable production and their cable output by 80% in 2024, right? But see, they started in 2019. Next slide.
So Corning Optical, 30 years they've been in business, they've never seen this demand. And they're building out a new plant in North Carolina. Don't know when that'll open, but they're seeing the demand now before the $40 billion is hit. Right? I don't have a slide for it, but Channel, we use Channel for a ton of stuff. They started building a plant in Vegas, I'm thinking 2 years ago, maybe a little more, probably 2 years ago. It's just barely up and going, and it's huge, like it's huge for us. And it's really close and it's there. But this building out capacity is a 2-year line, right? And so they've got to make the investment. And then 2 years later, you actually see the benefit of it. Next one. Okay, this one is an idea and it's worked for us. So you get a new project. You don't have to throw it straight engineering and all of that stuff right now. We've been doing this long enough. You got an 80% design. Go find your distributor, put it out to bid, get the POs out there at 85%, 80% design, and then go into engineering. And then you can fine tune that order at the end, but you started your clock on your design. So we found that to be a huge thing. So next one. The other thing you can do, and this used to be a very important thing for us. Always Prismium fiber, always CommScope MSTs, and you never strayed from that, and that's all you ever used. And we had the luxury of doing that for a while, right? I mean, because you could get what you wanted, the prices were comparable, all of those things. You paid for a premium, you got a premium, those types of things. Not anymore, right? I mean, Lynn asked me earlier, do you buy fiber from Millennium? Yep, them and everybody else. I mean, whoever has it, conduit, fiber, everything. So, and we were very specific about the types we bought. And now we're not as specific anymore, right? There's standards on certain things as long as they meet the thresholds, and it works. So be flexible, be open to the product. Some products, some products in the build are relatively easy to substitute and some aren't. So you can't, that's not always an answer. So. Next one. Okay, other strategies, supplier diversification. I just talked about that really briefly, but that is having a relationship with multiple suppliers, right? And it's not even about always hitting up the best price and all of those things. It's availability, making sure the availability. I found it to be incredibly consistent in talking to Millennium, Comstar, Irby, the others. I found it incredibly consistent when they tell me lead times. The lead times they're correct. They're across the board, right? Now, what is different is who has what on the ground, right? And getting in there and what's available. And that's where your relationship comes, and you have to have it with multiple of the distributors. Forecasting needs for 2023 and 2024 now. This was so weird for us to start doing this. But interestingly, you've got the data. You start pulling the invoices and those things. You've got the data, and there's patterns that emerge based on your build out and those things that you're going to find patterns that emerge. So you can run those patterns out 2023, 2024. And in addition, you're going to have special projects and things like that. But if you get that information to your distributors, and they have allocations they can help you with and move around. The other thing is group purchasing when possible. So, and Rebecca can attest to this. She came on a tour in central Utah in our yards and stock up to increase storage capacity. So yeah, we stock a lot more. Our inventory levels are 5 to 6 times what they were previous years. I mean, we're using every piece of property we can find. We're using the auto wrecking yard. You know, we've had space in the auto wrecking yard. We have, you know, I mean, eventually we'll probably put it in employees' backyards, but yeah. So that makes you a little bit more protected from it. You know, get it stocked up. So before we go to you know, workforce issues, do we have any other mitigation strategies anybody wants to share for supply chain issues?
I think your advice on stocking up and increasing your storage capacity is also another good opportunity for partnering, you know, with cities and municipalities, because, you know, they've got tracts and parcels of land, and if you have a relationship there, you know, that's maybe, okay, while we're doing the build out here, this is the staging site, and so not to, you know, ignore those relationships either.
Absolutely not. And run for public office, because then you can tell people where you're gonna put stuff. I'm the mayor of Fairview, so I know. I'm the mayor of Fairview, so I know.
Yeah, I love your idea of partnering, and having multiple partners with the, especially on the distribution side, and if you have the opportunity to work directly with the manufacturers, that's somewhat helpful. But, just to give you like a little bit of how the sausage is made, picture is that, because of what you're gonna talk about next is, you know, people issues, right? We have, contractors and, providers that are struggling to get the material in the ground. So we have, and I'm not exaggerating, we have warehouses busting at the seams full of material. Everything you've mentioned is sitting on our floors or on our shelves or in our yards right now as we speak. I mean, how many yards do we have in Utah?
4, you know.
4 yards full.
Yeah.
And we're probably looking at another one at some point. So the material's there, but they'll come back to us and say, hey, well, there's just no way we're gonna get this project this year or even first quarter of next year. So we'll open that up, because with the lead times, we can basically order their material back again and then basically sell it out from underneath the other projects that are not moving, because of probably the next thing you're gonna touch on. So it's extremely important to have a relationship with your distributors.
Yeah, we literally talked for over 2 hours specifically on just that, right? Like, you have the relationship, and I don't know how many of our POs recently were somebody else's order, right? They called and said, hey, I've got 288, I've got 832, I've got 864, whatever else. And we were waiting for 864 because of a design flaw that we didn't take into consideration, and somebody had one that was unable to be used. And so, and then it was a relationship with the vendor. You let them know, they see something come up, they can fill it later in their allocation. It's exactly the point, and it works.
Yeah, it does work.
But you have to have the relationships, and you don't get those relationships by pitting the distributors against each other either.
No, we work really well as an easy button. We don't work real well as a panic button.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Lynn?
I'm nervous for when the grant fundings come out for the state sections, because as government, we can't purchase until the funds are appropriated and put within a budget section. And it makes it a little bit hard to plan. You can be designed out and everything, and then you're ready to go. And they're like, oh, wait, we've got a year to go before we can even get the supplies in.
Depending on the size of the projects, that's what they're telling you they will do for you. They will put you in their allocation, depending on the size of the project, if they can do it. The distributors are saying, let us know, forecast your project in 2024, and we will give you this much of our allocation in 2024, and you don't have to pay anything now. You'll pay it when your funds come through.
But what if the funds don't come through?
Then they sell it to somebody else and they reallocate it to somebody else.
Yeah.
It's part of this whole
So kind of
project.
like a waiting period.
It's earmarked for you, and it's gonna be yours if you want it. But at the first moment that you don't, there's other people lining up to take it.
If you don't get the funds, somebody else is getting them, right?
Yeah, somebody else
true.
is
So
getting
if you don't get them, they're gonna go to.
Yeah,
somebody
and I
else.
hope I'm not
They just have
misspeaking.
that you want.
The distributors can say that, but or can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what we were told. And we were sitting with the distributors and discussing it.
Yeah, we're in a special time right now where manufacturers are okay, where they want you to get POs in right now to get in line. And let's say worst comes to worst, where you can't take those materials, there's no penalties of cancellation of a PO because there's somebody else out there to get it. So getting in line is a very important aspect right now to be planning at.
Yeah, forecasting, 2023, 2024, maybe 25, 26, if you don't.
So if you issue a PO, can you state those terms on the PO?
Absolutely. I mean, with the relationship that you have with the distributor, absolutely. I've done that multiple times and it's been successful. You know, there have been a couple of times where we would have to either reduce the project or the materials on the PO or cancel it altogether, or, you know, most of the time there really isn't an issue. Usually the funds come in, you know, as planned. But, you know, kind of having that approach with it, being able to, you know, work with manufacturers and have that freedom of like, hey, we didn't get it or it didn't go as planned, we can cancel it because there are other people out there that are ready to take it up.
And on the new reconnect, I'd love to talk to you too, if BEAD's gonna follow the same program where it has the irrevocable funding position in there. Love to chat with you about that too, because with our infrastructure fund, we're obviously allocating millions of dollars to providers, and you know, that's basically on an agreement. And so I'd like to talk to you about like what that would look like for the state of Utah for how you guys are gonna allocate BEAD funding, and on the matching grant, if we could somehow work out a way to meet the requirement and then still, so that way you can kind of bridge all of that together along with the materials. So it's all staged and ready to go if that provider wins the funding. So,
Okay, in the interest of time, I guess we'll. oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead, did you want?
The other thing to also maybe put in is, you know, if you label it yourself, though, it's harder to sell to another customer. So if you have to have UDOT stamped on every inch of your fiber, then it's hard to sell it to.
I think Paul said he'll have his kid laser engrave it for you, right?
Yeah, and for that reason, we stepped back and we went to DOT, so it could be sold at any DOT within the nation, so not UDOT, but we figure we're the only DOT within the state. So that's one, but we've even taken it unlabeled when we were desperate. Like for cares, we
Just don't lock yourself into certain.
yeah.
That's a good one. Okay, we'll move on to workforce issues real quick and then wrap it up because I think we're way over time, but that's okay. So, yeah, after the spike in unemployment in COVID in summer 2020, the American labor market rebounded quickly. It really did. I mean, the numbers, well, and we're not going to say everywhere, but definitely here in Utah, right? It definitely did. And now we're facing a labor shortage nationally. Operators are having problems. You talked about it earlier. Operators that subcontract out their builds, even internal employees, and you know, to get the work done, because now we have more work than ever. Next slide. So this is from somebody in Nebraska, chief construction officer. Nebraska had a historically low unemployment rate of 1.7%. One of the counties had a 0.8% unemployment rate. So try hiring laborers to build in a county that has an 0.8% unemployment rate. And a lot of these are the rural areas that could potentially be getting funding. So luckily we've been doing in the rural areas, there's a lot of rural areas represented here today. And have some very robust construction crews and those types of things, but we have other challenges, not necessarily construction. Next slide. This one's from a little closer to home, Derek Miller, Salt Lake Chamber president. All across Utah, in all industries, we're seeing a significant need for new employees. So, next slide. Okay, mitigation, keep existing employees, right? Let's try and keep your existing employees. It's easier, you've already invested in them. Retain top talent, you know, be reasonable, retain top talent. Bring back the boomers. This one's really sensitive to me because we lost an accountant that retired, and it's like, we probably should have kept him another couple of years. And, you know, if the 401k situation that's going on now was happening when he retired, he'd probably still be there. So use that to your advantage. You know, create areas where there can be a work-life balance, you know, initiatives that create a work-life balance. That's becoming more and more important. Most of us in this room won't be ones get to take benefit of that, but the other employees, yes. And this is one that we found during COVID. And it's such a hot button though. Remote work if feasible for job duties, right? As a provider, you know, you got technicians, they can't work from home, right? And, you know, there's a lot of positions that could, accounting can, technicians can't, you know, balancing that. But we have software programmers. They absolutely can work from home. And in some cases, they do better working from home. So if available, work from home seems to attract a lot of people. Present opportunities to grow and advance for your present employees. And compensation is always a factor. I mean, we like to think in these certain presentations you hear, they're like, oh, money's not the factor. Well, it's part of the factor. So next slide. Hiring new employees. So these are some of the things that we've done. Developed an internship program to convert them into full-time employees. Hiring those, especially on the construction side, those farm, and Brock can attest to this, farm boys or farm workers can turn into really good construction workers, and they're not afraid to work. Hire them that may not have the qualifications and train them. I mean, the programs are there. You want a tower climber, you can get them certified in a couple of months. So we use social media, online tools. We actually use a tool that Bamboo HR, which actually posts your jobs to 5 or 6 or 7 different programs that get it out there. And all of a sudden the applications were coming in. So implement an employee referral program. If you bring somebody to the company, some compensation for the existing employee.
promote from within, promote a current entry level position to something else once they prove themselves, and because it's easier, maybe easier to find an entry level position to replace them with. You know, replacing people's been tough, so. And I actually think that's it. So anybody have any questions or additional ideas? Okay, thank you.
You can always count on Brad to keep things fun around here. Okay, well, have it right to Vikram Ravi. He is our federal program officer for the state of Utah with the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. He's gonna give us a quick overview.
I'll just be a couple of minutes.
Quick is the.
So I'm just gonna do a brief introduction and then I want to give as much time for Rebecca. So I just want to give you guys an introduction. So NTIA, as part of all the programs they're rolling out, have hired federal program officers for almost every state in the United States. And the goal is so that when you guys have questions related to specifics in the NOFO or any requirements related to any of our grant programs, you don't have to basically send an email to a comment@nta.gov email. You can contact me directly and I can work to get those questions pushed and get answers to you quicker. So I want you guys to know my main role as a federal program officer is to support you all, both the public and private sector. I also want you guys to know I'll be an open door to anyone that wants to meet, wants to share concerns. All these concerns related to supply chain, workforce development, the needs that you're seeing in your community, I would be happy to sit down and hear from you all. The state is doing that too, and I will be working with the state as a partner, but also know that if you guys have anything else you want to raise to the awareness of NTIA, I will be here to do that. I just want to share one slide. Keep going. It just covers all the programs. Here we go. Go back. Yeah, so I just want you guys to know, so these are the primary programs that are in NTIA's purview per the IIJA Act. So BEAD, as you guys know, both BEAD and the Digital Equity Act are programs that are coming up within the next year. And so right now, a lot of what we'll be doing is just working with the state and deferring to the state on their plans that they'll be submitting to NTIA. But also, again, if you guys have things that, in addition to submitting to the state for feedback for their plan, if you have things you want to submit directly to NTIA as far as feedback, you're welcome to reach out to me for both BEAD and Digital Equity Act. I just want to comment on the tribal broadband connectivity program. So there was $1 billion given in the initial Consolidated Appropriations Act, and then another $2 billion given for a total of $3 billion. And so you guys may have seen some awards come out in some of the areas that you are currently serving. There will be a round 2 for the tribal broadband connectivity program. So if you guys have relationships with tribes in some of the areas where there are gaps, know that there's another round of funding to be able to work with tribes. And then the Middle Mile grant application has closed, and starting in March, on a rolling basis, awards will be announced. So that's all I have. I want to turn the time over to the state, but if you want to just go to the last slide, my email's there, and then you can also connect with me. I'd be happy to give you my phone number to set up a time to meet. Thank you all.
And I guarantee you Vikram will. He's been really good. We've had, some issues. We're working with the federal government. And I know they've got a handful of all that's going on, and he's been really good about getting some questions answered for us. He's a direct conduit to the President of the United States. No. So very quickly, I'm gonna go over just a list of things I have. I wanted to give you an update on what we are doing right now with the funding, the BEAD funding and our plans. So our office is working to on the FCC map challenge. Thank you all the providers for getting your deadline of September 1 to get your maps in of your coverage. Right now, it's open for challenge. And you're probably aware of that too. And this challenge is just on locations. So it's broadband serviceable locations. They're not asking about speeds or what's being provided at all right now. It's just like, is this a rock? Is this a barn? Or is this a house? And they use some kind of an algorithm. So some of the dots ended up on those things I just described to you. So we're verifying that they are actual addresses. We're working with our Utah Geospatial Resource Center, and I've talked to a number of providers, and I know that you are doing the same. So this map is really important because this will determine how much funding we receive. It will be on how many unserved locations eventually. So after this challenge closes, we are planning to submit by the end of October. They will have a month or so to redo the map, and then they're going to open it up again in December. And so it'll be open again to the providers to submit and look at it, make any changes, and to make any additions to your coverage. And then it won't be until about March when that closes, and it'll be after that they will announce the funding, if I have that right. We've begun, let's see, our middle mile application was submitted. There was there's 1 billion according to that chart that Vikram showed you, 1 billion for that program, and there was actually 5 billion ask in application. So we are doing more than crossing our fingers. We're just knowing that we've got solid applications. I know some of the other providers across the state that we were contacted individually have submitted, and so we're hopeful. But we won't hear about that one until after the first of the year. We've begun work on our 5-year digital connectivity plan. So this plan, as I've described in previous meetings, includes both like it's an infrastructure and it's digital inclusion. So we have both of that. We are working to get this plan put together. We're working with Horrocks, and they will be presenting very, very shortly about their efforts in doing outreach, which is very, very important for this plan because it doesn't make sense for us to just write it and assume. It's got to come from the local regions and from you, the providers and agencies and local municipalities that know what you have there in your areas. So in the coming months, we have funding for planning, and we will be having grants for local planning. So this will be both for broadband and for digital equity, it's called. So that will include, programs, planning how to help with adoption, how to help get devices, how to help make it affordable, how to, provide this awareness of the programs that are out there, or what we can do to help mitigate the monthly costs for accessing internet. And the plan will also, of course, involve the infrastructure. And that's the big one. That's where most of the funding is going towards. And we want to make sure we get it to the best use of the money, best use here in the state of Utah. The Utah Broadband Center Advisory Commission has been meeting. That's a committee that was formed by the legislators. If you're interested in those meetings, they are a notice meeting. So you can go to PMN, that's public meeting notice.utah.gov to find out when the meetings are. We have one scheduled for October 24th. Next week, and we're not making any motions on this one. We're just getting an update on the plan and how it's working. But those members of that committee are listed on our website. So if you would like to provide any input to them, they are to reach, they're to be a conduit also with stakeholders as we're developing this plan. A lot of avenues. And then before I turn over to Horrocks, and I'm sure they're gonna mention this, we do have a meeting scheduled tomorrow. It's a virtual meeting, 1:30 with internet service providers, and this is part of their outreach. So we just want to make sure that if you have not seen an invitation, talk to us. Don't leave until you talk to one of us about that, because this is all part of building and developing this 5-year plan. So I'm happy now to turn the remainder of the time over to Horrocks, this engineering firm. We have contracted with them to help us develop a plan. We are so excited. They are doing a killer job already. So we've got Brian Christensen, he's the principal, and Williams, associate is what I have down. That's great. I'm sure it's more than that.
Much more than that. Thanks,
Yeah.
Rebecca. Just really quick about Horrocks. We're a local firm. We've been in business in Utah for a little over 50 years now. We started out as an engineering firm, and we've been growing and morphing and adding a lot more services to our portfolio over the years. And now we're just known as Horrocks. We're not Horrocks engineers anymore, as you might have seen. That's a recent change, because we're a lot more service oriented than just doing engineering. We do have a strong engineering background. That's on, like I said, is where we started from. In the telecom world, we do a lot of fiber to the home design and broadband design, small cells, everything related to that, and also a lot of ancillary services as well, including environmental, structural, and pretty much a lot of other services, and a very strong public involvement team that's backing it. And I'll let Ann kind of expand on that a little bit more. Rebecca kind of already talked a lot about what we're going to be doing over the next several months with putting this plan together for the state. We're really excited for this opportunity to work together with a lot of folks in this room. It's going to be a big heavy lift for us, but we're going to need a lot of cooperation and collaboration from the partners here. The biggest part of this plan, as Rebecca had mentioned, is the infrastructure pieces. Where do we need to build, and what does that infrastructure need to look like? Is it going to be wireless? Is it going to be wired? Is it going to be a combination of both? And so that's going to be our biggest challenge. And then how do we prioritize those areas so that we can get the funding to go for those places that are either unserved or underserved? Let's go to the next slide. Okay, I was waiting for it to change on. Okay, so these are the definitions as defined by the BEAD program, underserved and underserved, and you can see the areas there. Let's go to the next slide. So we, as Rebecca had alluded to, we have a kind of an initial partnering / kickoff meeting tomorrow afternoon, virtual. If you have not received an invitation to that, please let us know before you leave, because we're trying to capture every ISP that does business within the state of Utah, to find out what your services that you provide, if you have any future expansion plans and offerings and that types of thing. We're not going to get into details on that tomorrow. It's just going to more of an introduction of the program and what we're going to be doing. But then we're going to be holding one-on-one meetings with the ISPs in confidential settings so that we can get through some of those details. Because if it weren't for the ISPs, we wouldn't be able to bring this plan into fruition. So we have to work with you guys individually on a one-on-one basis. And then obviously the federal funding is going to be helping with that. So I'm going to turn this over to Ann to finish out the rest of.
Perfect.
Do you want to stand here because I think the cameras.
Sure, sounds good. All right, thanks everyone. I've learned a lot in this meeting today. So as Brian mentioned, we're supporting Rebecca and her broader team in developing the 5-year action plan. A big part of that process is, as Rebecca mentioned, is what we are calling outreach. So public involvement, outreach, communication. It's basically an effort to reach out to the whole state and to get input back from the public, from you guys, from agencies, providers, community leaders, local governments. We need input from anyone throughout the whole state, because that's going to really help piece together with all the input you're providing, all the ISPs are providing. We need then also other input to just make sure we're covering and we're really identifying the gaps. And specifically based on those priorities that Brian mentioned, the underserved and unserved areas throughout the state. So really important. We are very close to kicking off our outreach effort. We've actually created, and working with Rebecca and her team, kind of a public facing brand. I don't know if you can kind of see it. It's right at the top there. It's Connecting Utah. We wanted something that really spoke to what this effort is. So we're going to be launching this effort with a website. We'll make sure that it gets out to everybody. So everybody has the website available. It'll kind of detail the ways that the public can provide their feedback, as well as all the partners and all of you. We'll have a survey on that website that we have a few different versions based on the type of individual or your type of role. But we'd like everyone to take the survey, and we have some other tools as well. But part of our process in going out and reaching out to the public, there's a lot of ways we're going to do that. One of them being that we're going to be going into all of the counties throughout the state. We're going to be facilitating some workshop meetings at that county level, but then also inviting the cities, the local governments, a part of that county to come to kind of a workshop-based meeting. So we'll do those throughout the state. As part of kind of the mapping process, as we start to drill down and we start to identify kind of those underserved, kind of those locations that potentially have a lot of those gaps, we'll be doing more kind of grassroots kind of outreach in those specific areas to really drill down and understand, the specifics there. So this just kind of details some other ways. We're working really closely with Vikram, with Liz, who's on this call, with the library, and just on that digital equity piece. Our outreach is gonna kind of go out to the public all as one. We're working really closely. So basically, we need your help. We would love all of your help to provide input. We will make sure, there should be a way, right, that we can get an email out to everybody once we launch the website. And please help us. Please share it with those that you work with other, whomever you work with, you'll know. Please share it out and help us get a lot of great feedback from the public, excuse me. The timeline on this is we're doing this outreach effort launching very soon, and we'll be doing this through, January will really be the real heavy months for this. And then I know timeline from there is Brian and his team is taking all this info, and we're starting to develop the plan from there. So it is a pretty quick, tight time frame, and we know that we'll be able to do it with all of your great input. So anything else that I missed? Oh, Katie Williams here is a key part of the outreach team as well. And we have other team members as well. So we are also available for questions. If you have input, if you feel like that's necessary to kind of meet one-on-one, we are so happy to do that.
Any questions?
Yes, any questions? Thank you so much.
Okay, well, we made it before the half hour. First, so thank you all for coming. If you haven't had enough to eat, I know there's leftovers, so be safe and stay in touch.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.